An introduction to the U.S. government's suppression of a UAP in advanced science. Another article here I had up from the New Paradigm Institute. This introduction to the disinformation series essay collection outlines how the U.S. government has systematically used secrecy, disinformation, and legislative controls to suppress public understanding of NHI, UAP, and advanced scientific research, thereby obstructing transparency, accountability, and discovery. What are the consequences for this heinous act? I don't know. Will there be any consequences? Quite the case study here. I can see the disinformation series. My God, they've got all kinds of stuff. Interesting. Arrow and the 2024 UAP reports, Project Sign of the Condom report. This is all really good stuff to read if you weren't familiar with this stuff. I mean, I myself would love to go through some of this stuff again. The MK Ultra program, COINTELPRO, Operation Mockingbird. That's a great one. Oh my God. Through COVID, if more people had watched documentaries on that. Of course, that was a spicy thing to bring up at the time. Remote viewing and Project Stargate. I've talked about it here ad nauseum. Nikola Tesla. This is all great shit. Yeah. Great shit. This essay series examines and critiques the systematic use of disinformation, secrecy, and legislative mechanisms by the United States government to suppress knowledge of the reality of NHI, UAP, and certain advanced scientific research innovation. Drawing on declassified documents, congressional investigations, news sources, and recent whistleblower testimony, this paper explores how executive branch entities have used narrative control over classification and legislative instruments to purposely obstruct public understanding and scientific progress concerning UAP and certain advanced sciences. Historical case studies, including official UAP investigations, Project Stargate, MK Ultra, COINTELPRO, Operation Mockingbird, are analyzed to illustrate a durable pattern of information suppression extending from the Cold War to the present. This paper further evaluates the role of the Special Access Programs, these SAPs, and the UAP Security Classification Guide, and specific statutory frameworks such as the Atomic Energy Act and the Invention Secrecy Act to conceal potentially transformative technologies. Ultimately, the essay calls for urgent legislative and executive branch reforms to ensure transparency, restore public trust, and democratize access to paradigm-shifting scientific discoveries. My. On July 26, 2023, retired U.S. Air Force Intelligence Officer David Grush provided sworn testimony to the U.S. House Oversight Committee Subcommittee on National Security that the U.S. government is in present physical possession of non-human craft and biological evidence of non-human intelligence. While speaking at the SALT Eye Connections New York conference on May 21st, 2024, retired U.S. Army Colonel Carl Nell, former member of the U.S. Department of Defense's UAP task force, stated there is zero doubt that NHI exists. NHI has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new. It's been ongoing, and there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that and have been involved with back engineering it. And Christ knows what else information they've gleaned from all of this and what kind of philosophies they developed or top-down understanding of reality they have that we don't. It's extremely concerning. Lou Elizondo, former senior leader of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, a secretive Department of Defense unit that studied UAP, confirmed in his book, imminent released in August 2024, that NHI exists. Their craft is not made by humans. Yes. Eric Davis, astrophysicist who consulted with the DoD's ATIP and UAP task force, informed members of Congress that the U.S. government and aerospace defense contractors have retrieved UAP. Yes. That was just recent. Yes. Sorry. If these declarative statements and more like them are factual, they raise an urgent question. How has the U.S. government managed to conceal revelations of such strategic magnitude for decades, dating back at least to the post-World War II era? Given its world historical nature, the ability to conceal such information from the public over such a prolonged period is not likely due to the singular effort. It almost certainly must instead be the product of a complex, multi-pronged strategy. This paper will argue that the UAP and NHI are real and that the disinformation has played a central role in the government's concealment of these realities. Yes. Unlike misinformation caused by human error, disinformation by the federal government is a deliberate and strategic distortion of facts systematically deployed to manipulate public perception, conceal sensitive information, and often preserve the power of those with institutional control. Evidence will show that the use of secrecy laws, narrative controls, selective disclosure, media manipulation, and psychological operations has allowed the U.S. government to not only hide the truth about NHI, UAP reverse engineering programs, but to discredit, stigmatize, and threaten those who attempt to expose these secrets. Yes. It has. It's been fairly blatant, actually, when you look back through the history of the statements given by many people within the military-industrial complex. Historical examples including MKUltra's unethical experiments on unsuspecting Americans, COINTELPRO's targeting of unconstitutionally protected dissenters, and Operation Mockingbird's unlawful and unconstitutional infiltrations and distortion of American news sources reveal a government engaged in disinformation campaigns not to protect national security, but to safeguard the private interest of unelected bureaucrats and conceal unlawful actions and misdeeds in direct contravention of democratic principles. Yes. Very well written. Yeah, this is very well written. This is Danny Sheehan's institute, by the way. The Robertson panel prescribed debunking UFO sightings through media ridicule. The Project Blue Book was less of a scientific inquiry than a disinformation campaign designed to trivialize UAP reports. Yes. For people that don't know, again, it was J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée who worked on the Project Blue Book. And after they were done with the Project Blue Book, J. Allen Hynek then went on to essentially make the precursor to MUFON. Because after going through and dealing with all the first-hand witnesses, although they completed the work for the book, which is essentially just to discredit the phenomena, they became completely convinced it was real. So it kind of backfired on them in the end. Even in the current era, this activity continues. The ARROW, established by Congress in 2022 and tasked with investigating the U.S. government's involvement with UAP, willfully produced a misleading and incomplete historical report in 2024. That report was strategically pre-briefed to select media outlets to frame public perception, and key classified programs and credible whistleblower statements were intentionally omitted. These actions violate Executive Order 12333, which explicitly prohibits U.S. government agencies from engaging in covert disinformation campaigns to influence domestic political processes or public opinion. The evidence detailed in this essay reveals a systematic pattern of deception that spans multiple generations of U.S. government policy on UAP. Now, available historical evidence proves the Condon report, commissioned by the U.S. Air Force under the guise of an independent scientific evaluation, was structured from the outset to discredit UAP research. Internal documentation later revealed that the report's negative conclusions were predetermined before the study began. This deliberate framing mirrors the tactics used by ARROW in its 2024 report, reinforcing the conclusion that official UAP inquiries across decades have functioned not as genuine investigations, but as insidious public relations efforts to neutralize public interest in congressional oversight. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%. The suppression of the NHI and UAP is not an isolated or unique irregularity, but part of a broader historical strategy of concealing and actively suppressing scientific breakthroughs and technological advancements. For example, the confiscation of Nikola Tesla's research by the Office of the Alien Property Custodian following his death in 1943 is an early dramatic example of how potentially transformative scientific discoveries, especially those related to energy, electricity distribution, and propulsion, have been seized and classified. More recently, whistleblower David Grush testified under oath before Congress in 2023 that the U.S. government is engaged in covert UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs. Allegations which the ARROW's then director, Sean Kirkpatrick, swiftly dismissed, despite similar statements by former intelligence officials and military personnel dating back decades, including Edward J. Ruppelt, a captain in the U.S. Air Force who served as director of Project Grudge and later Project Blue Book. Yes. And then Sean, in the end, admits that, well, I'm not privy to that information that would really give me an answer one way or the other if these programs even exist. So then how do you dismiss them? He essentially just said that I had no knowledge of these things existing. So that doesn't mean they don't exist, right? So it's fucking... I don't think we were involved enough for NHI to take us seriously. One look at our inability to truly trust each other and our crazy appetite for greed is enough to keep the Vulcans away for at least another 500 to 1,000 years. Yeah, as long as we get there without blowing each other up, they might consider it. Would you engage with alien shit-flinging mantises? Probably not. No. That's why we must collectively here align ourselves with the higher good, right? That's why we got to raise our vibrations. I got a couple boxes of crystals on the way. You know, I'm going to fix my chi. So when the cataclysms truly begin in earnest, maybe they'll pick me up, right? I'll be cleansed enough. All right, I'm going to stop eating meat, stop watching fucking YouTube shorts of Asmongold and Hassan drama. I'm going to give up all of this fucking terrible stuff that I do. Stop drinking liquor. That's probably not going to happen, but anyway, we got to cleanse ourselves, right, for them. Align ourselves with a higher good. This tactic of excessive classification is exhibited by the UAP Security Classification Guide, produced in April 2020 by the Department of Defense's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. It prohibits the public release of any and all UAP-related videos and images, regardless of whether such information constitutes a meaningful threat to national security. In addition to leveraging disinformation and overclassification, the executive branch has relied on legislative frameworks to institutionalize secrecy and restrict access to many breakthrough scientific technologies. The Atomic Energy Act 1946 and the Invention Secrecy Act 1951 have long been misused to classify patents in scientific discoveries related to energy, propulsion, and aerospace technologies, some of which, if classified, could potentially revolutionize entire industries. These laws, which originated at the start of the Cold War, ostensibly to protect genuine national security, safeguard nuclear secrets from the Soviet Union, now stifle progress by serving as instruments of scientific suppression. Even now, thousands of patents remain under secrecy orders, including inventions related to novel energy production, distribution, and propulsion systems. These classified patents represent an untapped reservoir of scientific advancement that could address societal needs. Indeed, elements within the executive branch are fond of classifying entire fields of math and physics. Yes, Mark Andreessen, a co-founder of the venture capitalist firm Andreessen Horowitz, recently alleged the White House officials asserted they were fully prepared to classify mathematical areas of artificial intelligence. This practice has led to effective halting of advancement in fields deemed too touchy on national security. Oh yeah, that doesn't get brought up enough. Yeah, Wayne, it's the Jesuits, jeez. Yeah. The need for systematic reform is urgent and legislative vehicles are available. For example, the proposed UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, initially introduced by Senators Chuck Schumer, a liberal, and Mike Rounds, a conservative, in July 2023, as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2024, sought to establish an independent UAP records review board modeled after the successful JFK Assassination Records Review Board. The UAPDA would mandate the controlled and responsible release of government-held NHI and UAP records, limit the arbitrary classification of such information, and ensure public access to historically significant information. Yes, okay. Equally necessary is the passage of enhanced UAP whistleblower protections, such as those proposed by the New Paradigm Institute. Meanwhile, the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act in 1998 offers some safeguards in its amended form, but does not protect individuals from disclosing information about deeply buried SAPs or reverse engineering efforts related to UAP. They hid them inside the PSAPs. They're inside the PSAPs. The WooSAPs and PSAPs. This essay will demonstrate that the historical record is clear. The U.S. government has consistently engaged in disinformation and suppression to control narratives related to UAP and other unconventional sciences. The parallels among Project Blue Book, the Robertson Panel, and the Arrow's 2024 report highlight an ongoing game plan to stigmatize, discredit, withhold information that could transform society and redefine understanding of the universe. This series will examine historical record of government disinformation campaigns, demonstrating how past efforts to suppress political dissent, control media narratives, and stifle scientific research provide a blueprint for understanding modern UAP secrecy. Establish clear parallels between past and present suppression efforts, demonstrating how the tactics used in COINTELPRO, MKUltra, Operation Mockingbird, Project Stargate are still in effect today. Yep. Advocate for urgent policy reforms to modernize secrecy laws, expand congressional oversight, and ensure that scientific progress serves the public rather than an entrenched national security state. Yep. The question is no longer whether the U.S. government has historically engaged in disinformation campaigns and deployed similar tactics to hide the reality of the NHI-UAP. The question is how long these tactics will continue to be tolerated before the public demands complete transparency and accountability. Very well put. Very well written. Very great overview. Yeah. And there's going to be a longer report, I believe. I'm going to get citations here of everything. That's going to be coming out, highlighting all of this here as they've kind of laid out the disinformation series. So, wonderful. This is a great way, this is another reason why that hardline kind of skeptic community thinks this is all nonsense are just complete smooth brains. Like really though, honestly, it's very clear there's been a disinformation campaign that's been ongoing for a long time. And I mean, obviously there's a reason for that. It's been pretty clear. Now we don't have a piece of this stuff. The general public doesn't have a piece of these crafts, but there's clearly been a campaign against stigmatized, demonized people who've been looking into this seriously. And this has been known for a while. And I mean, anyway, it's just, I'm glad there's more, this conversation's circulating more widely. Like Stanton Friedman had laid this out many years ago. So has Jacques Vallée, so have many others, but very well put. And absolutely, I'd love to read through the entirety of this when it comes out. So thank you for watching. This is going to go on YouTube probably. Thank you for watching on YouTube, the 3 people that watch us on YouTube.